Hello, everyone. Nice to speak with you all. My name is Ashley Nyquist. I work at the World Economic Forum on the Blockchain and Digital Assets platform, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our platform and approach and focus in on one specific social impact project that we've been doing. So our platform aims to ensure equity, interoperability, transparency, and trust in the governance of distributed ledger technologies. We hope to accelerate the necessary changes for this technology to reach its full potential by co-designing and testing policy frameworks for blockchain technology and blockchain-based digital assets, and assembling stakeholders to explore potential use cases and solve for challenges. On the right, we have some of the principles that we abide by as a team when we think about engaging with blockchain technology. Our approach is that we engage a lot of stakeholders. We have a very multilateral approach and philosophy at the forum. So we engage government, private sector, civil society, and academia to build a shared understanding of blockchain and digital assets by testing, learning, and scaling through cross-cutting projects exploring the benefits and limits of blockchain. And we develop future-oriented and globally relevant governance frameworks applicable to diverse industries and geographies. So there's a lot of words here, but I'll show you 7 very specific projects that we've been managing at the forum. Oh, pardon. Before I get to that, here is the realm where we tend to play. We work on projects related to governing platforms, regulatory and legal challenges, standards and interoperability, and enabling infrastructure. Of course, this is just a quick introduction, so I can come back to answer any specific questions later. Here are 7 specific projects we've done as a platform, so I wanted to show you these. I'll walk through them each quite quickly. The first one is called Central Banks in the Age of Blockchain. This is a project I managed in 2018 and 2019, and this was with a private community of several dozen central banks and international organizations. And we built a knowledge sharing community for them to share their research and questions and work on blockchain and also DLT in general. And on DLT and blockchain and central bank digital currency. And we co-designed a policy framework called the Central Bank Digital Currency Policymaker Toolkit to guide central banks in their decisions of whether or not to issue CBDC. And that framework was released in January. In another project we have called Redesigning Trust, Blockchain for Supply Chains. This is with the United Arab Emirates. And here we developed frameworks to shape the deployment of blockchain for supply chains such that it's inclusive, interoperable, the solutions that enterprises develop. The third project, Unlocking Government Transparency. This is a project I managed in the past year and a half with public institutions in Colombia. And this was investigating the use of blockchain to increase transparency and accountability in government processes to reduce corruption. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that one. Fourth, we have a project called Blockchain as a Team Sport, which was about the governance of blockchain consortia, of blockchain industry consortia. And then fifth, we had a project on smart contracts managed in our India office, which was about, and it's ongoing, which is about developing, testing, and rolling out legal and policy frameworks for smart contracts. So what kind of legal work, groundwork needs to be established for smart contracts to be accepted, and what are important technical and other elements needed for adoption of smart contracts. And then second to last, a project called the Digital Currency Governance Consortium, which researches and is creating frameworks to address very specific issues in stablecoins and central bank digital currencies. This is a new project that's just kicking off now. Happy to answer any questions there. And finally, a project called Reimagining Regulation, Pathways to Digital Currency. This is in South Korea, and it's about prototyping regulatory frameworks that support responsible domestic deployments of digital currency. So this is the full set of very active projects right now. One project I thought I would highlight is this one called Unlocking Government Transparency. And it was an investigation of blockchain in public procurement. And what we wanted to do here was really evaluate if blockchain technology can be used to reduce corruption in public procurement. Why? Public procurement, it's the act of governments purchasing goods and services or building a bridge or supplying hospitals. They spend about $10 trillion a year. And this is also the site where more corruption happens in terms of public sector funds lost than any other activity in the world. And it's the leading problem, stifling economic, social progress in some economies. So there's a huge opportunity for impact in addressing corruption in public procurement. The World Bank on the phone has stated that addressing this one issue could have profound economic development benefits. So we wanted to address this issue of public procurement, not going into a lot of details in this brief introduction, but what we basically did was we formed a partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank on the phone and the Office of the Inspector General of Colombia. And so we found these very wonderful partners who were willing to work with us to run a project, a research project, an experiment into how blockchain can help in this public procurement process. We developed a software proof of concept. It was designed for the Ethereum mainnet. It was focused on vendor bidding and bid evaluation phases of procurement, which of course I can explain further if you'd like. What we really wanted to do was investigate blockchain for procurement. Does it add value? Does it increase transparency and reduce corruption in procurement? And specifically, we started with public permissionless blockchain, and that's where we focused most of our research, designing for Ethereum mainnet, and we drew the most conclusions about whether permissionless blockchain helps with this use case of procurement. There are also many other elements to this project about public policy and civic engagement. We developed a very specific civic engagement strategy so that citizens would basically be able to use a Web 2.0 regular website and anonymously post comments and track live procurement auctions as they're happening. And of course, when they're posting comments, no comments can be deleted because on the back end, a hash of them is being posted to Ethereum for record keeping. And so we developed a lot of those different types of controls. I'll jump ahead to our report, which I'll post in the chat. We released this in June, and so there's a comprehensive report of all of the findings of the project online now, and it includes many elements. So we analyzed this use case, blockchain for procurement, drew conclusions about its value. We also included many technical design guidelines about how blockchain-based procurement could be created and what kind of design you might want. A full set of functional software specifications so that governments around the world could see and leverage these design guidelines and specifications and maybe build something themselves if they would like. An analysis of the technical limitations of using blockchain, many public policy recommendations to implement alongside a blockchain-based digital procurement platform, civic engagement strategy, an analysis of several other blockchain use cases for anti-corruption and where they have value and limitations, and a lot of relevant research that we provided an annotated bibliography of. So altogether, it's our understanding that this is the most comprehensive blockchain anti-corruption research study ever conducted thus far.
Amazing, thank you, Ashley. We're gonna move on now to the World Bank for them to explain what they're doing and how especially the technology labs is experimenting with blockchain and what type of projects they're looking at.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello everyone. My name is Ronak, and I'm from World Bank Group Technology and Innovation Lab. And it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Vanessa. So I'll quickly try to cover some of the exploration that the Technology and Innovation Lab is doing at the World Bank with blockchain, and then highlight some of the challenges, lessons learned, and pose some open questions. So to quickly talk briefly about the Technology and Innovation Lab and the mandate and its focus, we serve as an internal learning platform and an exploration sort of sandbox for emerging technologies for internal World Bank Group staff, whether it be focused on internal digital transformation efforts or for our client countries. So we operate in four big buckets. One is around exploration through proof of values and hands-on experimentation. The second bucket is on focused on operationalization of emerging tech, whether it be through field testing, incubation, scaling efforts. The third is looking into sectoral digital transformation opportunities that could be there. And fourth is serving as a internal knowledge and partnership hub. So these are some quick four broad areas that we work at. Now we'll quickly touch upon some of the use cases that we've been exploring recently, and there are many, but I'll focus on a few of them. So the first one that you can see is the traceability of World Bank loan disbursements. Recently, so we've been trying to tackle the challenge here around the end-to-end visibility and transparency of the disbursed funds on World Bank funded projects. To address the challenge of labor-intensive and inefficient sort of coordination that requires for auditing purposes. Recently, we went to the market and launched an REI. So building on the internal exploration, which we have done for all these four use cases that I'm talking about. And recently, we launched an REI for this particular use case and worked with a few technology partners to really understand different solution design architectures that could be possible and feasibility and scalability for enterprise adoption. The second one that you see here is the health results-based financing. And the challenge here was the time and cost intensive verification process that is there for many results-based financing programs, and in this case for the delivery of health services. It also sort of deals with tracking and tracing of delivery of equipments, health-related equipments, for example. So in this case, also we did an internal exploration in the lab environment, but then we went ahead and did a field testing in Côte d'Ivoire in 3 health facilities. And the idea was to really understand how the user experience fitness of the prototype, which is developed in a lab environment in the local context, and also receiving feedback from the government and local stakeholders. The third project is that I'm trying to highlight here is the Evoke project, which is about reshaping youth education service delivery. The challenge we are trying to tackle is the lack of motivation among youth and high dropout rates that we see in some of the schools in Colombia, and lack of transparency and high monitoring costs which are involved in the resources that are deployed for some of the results-based financing programs in education. And can blockchain technology help us provide the needed sort of transparency, traceability in some of these initiatives, but also incentivize students towards learning and skill development? So this project actually started in 2018, where we did an internal exploration and partnered with Consensus for initial sort of design discussions and understanding what those reward-based tokenized incentives would look like. But more recently, we were able to collaborate with other World Bank Group teams and try this with a pilot in Colombian universities by collaboration with local talent pool. Who then took that sort of initial prototype and designed it for this pilot. The fourth project that I'm highlighting here is the verifiable credentials for labor mobility. So here at the lab, we did an internal exploration and proof of value and prototype this concept of DLT-enabled verifiable credentials framework. And the challenge that it was trying to tackle was it is difficult, and it is difficult in obtaining and verifying the credentials for certain participants who are taking part in the labor mobility programs in Pacific Island countries. So how can we try and address that cost and time-intensive process of gaining those credentials and verifying those credentials? And it sort of involves different parties, including people who are issuing them, and then the verification of those credentials, then to sort of go through that entire process of labor mobility programs. So we did an internal exploration, and right now we are in the stage of sharing that with our internal teams and doing those sort of knowledge sharing exercises with them to see the further potential of this use case. Just to briefly touch upon this topic of blockchain interoperability, as we believe this is key to mainstreaming and then also adopting at scale. So we have an internal exploration huddle on interoperability, and we've been also engaging with other sort of international institutions, whether it be World Economic Forum, IDB, or the European Commission, the INADBA Association, where this is a key topic that we've been looking into. But the focus of this internal exploration is more in terms of understanding what that interoperability need is from a functional and operational perspective. What are those use cases? And we are seeing those real needs emerging. And then also gain a hands-on sort of experience on experimenting with the existing interoperability protocols that we see today. In addition to that, we are also looking at legal and governance requirements and implications that this could pose. So some of the lessons learned and challenges, majority of our exploration and operationalization efforts have focused on DLT, which are enterprise blockchain platforms. And this is majorly due to the functional requirements that we see here. But we do keep a close tab on the developments that are happening on the permissionless blockchain space, and also sort of learning from that and seeing how and where that space is heading, and the different models around connecting private and permissionless blockchains is also something that we are trying to explore further and learn more about. We see there's a great value in rapid prototyping because it helps in build the knowledge and gains hand-on experience, which then sets the path for operationalization, which is critical. Building strong learning networks has been immensely helpful, and want to highlight the need for that public-private sector partnership and engagement, which we have done through continuous exploration and also in the operationalization process. So this has been critical in terms of learning and building capabilities, and then also trying to sort of operationalize some of those technologies. Some challenges, there are unknown answers towards convergence of blockchain with other emerging tech, and the integration and interoperability with existing technology systems. So we are closely looking into those and how we can sort of address some of them. Then the insufficient and rapidly evolving policy regulatory frameworks. To deal with them is a bit challenging, but that is also keeping pace, and especially in the context of FCV countries. And in addition to this, the existing digital infrastructure that persists is also something which pose different challenges. So with that, some open questions, and then I would end. This sort of exploration and operationalization requires or is hinting towards change in public service delivery models. And what would be those corresponding changes and corresponding institutional arrangements that would be needed is something which we need to look at. There is some insufficient maturity of the ecosystem that we see. There's a need for digital skills that needs to be developed at different organizational and institutional levels. And lack of clarity on costing also are some of the concerns when implementing a particular project. We see there is definitely a more need for documenting the development and economic impact of introducing blockchain in some of the problem areas that we are talking about, and there is a need for more evidence and assessment. Just to build on this point on open source, in the previous panel, this was highlighted as well, that blockchain is building on the free software, the freedom of software and open source technologies, which is very interesting. And it also requires a different approach than traditional software adoption through various stages of design, build, deploy, operate, and maintenance. And this poses different raises different questions for some of our client countries, which might be slowing down the uptake. So just wanted to highlight that. And then the role of blockchain. What is the role of blockchain in building global digital public good platforms, which is still a work in progress, but could have a large impact? And I think that's a good point to stop, and also good segue to Marcos from IDB.
I think we don't have too much time left, so I'm going to try to be very fast in my presentation. Okay, the analysis that Ashley and also Raunak presented on how the ecosystem is fragmented, how we need to build ecosystem, to build infrastructure, and to build frameworks is the base of our work as well. In our case, this work motivated the creation of LuxLaksan. LuxLaksan is a program with the purpose of, or is a global alliance with the purpose of developing the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I'm Marcos Allende, the technical leader and coordinator of this program. This program was or is led by the Innovation Lab of the InterAmerican Development Bank, a multilateral that funds governments and entities in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have currently the IDB group has more than $100 million in active loans. But let's talk about blockchain. The purpose of the program is or has two different and complementary areas or goals. We are focusing on developing community, and we are focusing on developing infrastructure, in align with what I was saying at the beginning. So regarding the community, LuxLaksan is working with local ecosystems, is organizing all type of different national workshops in different matters related to blockchain. We are coordinating working groups in areas like technology, regulation, digital identity, tokenized fiat money, trust frameworks, governance, and all that. We are also organizing hackathons and challenges, and we are even doing investments in startups. But that's not enough from our perspective, because the problem with blockchain is not only that people are not working together enough. The problem with blockchain is that there are not reliable blockchain networks out there. When we are developing blockchain projects, and we at the IDB have the experience of more than 20 initiatives that I will mention very briefly, we know that the infrastructures that are available out there are good for pilots, but don't allow to scale to production. Both the public permissionless networks and the private permission networks don't scale, and there's more than 5,000 of those networks in the market that are not reliable for the scalability of good pilots and successful pilots. So in LuxLaksan, we started developing reliable infrastructure that we are offering in the form of public permission networks. We are developing, additionally to the blockchain layer, 2 layers of self-sovereign identity and tokenized fiat money. We are developing all kinds of monitoring tools and data analytic tools, because our networks are public. So we want all the information to be accessible and available for everyone. We are developing all kinds of different tools on top of the infrastructure and free apps that we are providing to everyone that is using infrastructure, and a marketplace of applications. Okay, so what have we achieved so far? So far, we have more than 500 entities interested in our ecosystem. We have more than 32 entities running nodes in our network, including governments from Latin America, private entities, public institutions, academic, startups, all kinds of entities that are participating in our network. We have more than 15 projects that are using the same multi-purpose infrastructure that is totally free, both the access and the transactions. And we are building ecosystems in 19 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean with local entities. These are our partners that include, of course, Consensus and many of the Consensus teams that we are so pleased to collaborate with, Vanessa, as you know. And these are the entities that are running nodes currently in the infrastructure. There are more entities than these ones that are working with our infrastructure, but these are the ones that are currently running nodes directly. You can see governments, you can see large financial institutions, you can see a lot of different types of entities here. And these are some of the projects. I'm not going to stop in the projects because I'm presenting, I'm more interested in presenting LuxLaksan today as this infrastructure and ecosystem, but we have more than 25 projects that we are supporting in different ways in Latin America and the the Caribbean with blockchain technology. So in words of Alejandro Pardo, who is the founder and leader of this beautiful initiative, what we are trying to create is the Internet of Value. So what we are creating is, we are not developing either technology or protocol. So we believe that Ethereum, Besu, Hyperledger Fabric, R3, Ava Labs, EOS are good protocols. They have good roadmaps and they have good development teams behind. What we are building is a framework that allows to build from any of those protocols a network that can scale, a blockchain network that can be reliable and useful for any production use case. So we are building networks that have a first layer of public permission blockchain, okay? And we are using Hyperledger Besu and EOS right now for that. We are building a layer of self-sovereign identity, and we are building a layer of tokenized fiat money. And not only that, but we are building these networks under the concept of building not just one blockchain network, but a network like a quantum safe network of networks. We believe that with one single network, we are not going to be able to satisfy the demand that includes different use cases that need different governance models and also different regulatory frameworks around the network, for example, for the issuance of a bond. And also we believe that there's going to be a lot of transactionability that also requires to have different networks to be able to spread the transaction. So we are building a central mainnet where we are starting to build the layer of digital identity with the DID documents, the keys, the DIDs and the mobile wallets. We are also starting to tokenize fiat money with financial institutions like Citibank in these networks. And we are creating interoperability between other networks that are either governed by LuxLaksan or not governed by LuxLaksan. Like, for example, efforts like Finality or the National Network for Brazil that we have been working on with BNDES and others. And we also provide our networks as an anchor for other infrastructures. Very quickly, because I think I'm running out of time.
Yes.
So we have more than 15 million blocks, 61 nodes deployed, and 32 entities running the network. Our infrastructure has been recognized by International Telecommunications Union and as one of the 14 architectures of reference in the world. Everyone can deploy a node and use our infrastructure for free. Just go to our GitHub, find our registration agreement and join us, use our network for free and join all of these institutions. You have all of these links available for you. And finally, I want to say that today we have released our book on self-sovereign identity. It's about 100 pages that we would love you to download. I'm going to leave it in the chat right now, and we are going to be presenting it in the last panel of the day today at 6:30. So please join us again with Vanessa. We have been working with international experts from the European Union, ITU, ISO, the OCDE.
I don't either, to be honest. Yeah.
And many others. We are so pleased to share this effort with you. Also IDEMIA, that I think it is in this call. So with that, thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm sorry for being so much for my presentation. And please, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I will be more than pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So we're going to move very quickly to questions. So it's quite exciting to see the breadth of the work that these organizations are doing, ranging from healthcare to labor, education, identity, fighting against corruption, and combining a top-down approach and a bottoms-up approach, which is quite innovative, and this rapid, prototyping aspect that the World Bank is experimenting with the labs. And so my question to the panelists is in driving forward these initiatives, how
there is a UN clinic in Dhaka for less serious stuff, and now it's been better equipped. So before anyone,
Human, you're not muted. My question was, when you interact with governments, with large institutions who want to experiment with blockchain and understand the potential impact and potential to scale of these solutions, how do you engage with them, and what are their positioning? Because I think the World Bank alluded to the fact that you're experimenting more on the enterprise and private change because it's the level of comfort that people are at. What has been your experience with all the entities that you interface with? Maybe Ashley or Ranak to start.
Sure, maybe I can start, and then Ashley and Marcos can add to it. So to highlight this point about the private permission sort of network. I think it is important to also mention that dealing with these private permission networks and building them is not that easy, with contrary to the general notion, right? So even that we seemed quite difficult in the conversation regarding the governance on making decisions in terms of how those sort of design decisions need to be arrived at, and it takes a lot of effort and time in that doing that. And regarding some of the conversations, I think, and just to give a couple of examples, so in the Côte d'Ivoire project, for instance, we did an internal exploration, but then working with the government counterparts was a long drawn process in terms of conveying the potential benefits and how that structure could look like. Was a bit of long drawn process, and then we tried to do that and take a next step by going on ground, doing field testing and understanding what those priorities and challenges could be. And there are different experiences, and there was another project that we did, which was in Pakistan, around tracking of agricultural equipments. We did an internal exploration, and then it's there in production, where the client country sort of partnered with the local innovation system to operationalize it. So it depends how different conversations take place regarding the projects. And from a front-end perspective, just want to clarify that we are working with World Bank Group staff and serving them as a sort of technology advisors, and they are the people who are making these conversations, and we are trying to do the necessary sort of sharing around knowledge and learnings that we sort of gain by doing hands-on experience in the lab, which helps in then going to the next stage of operationalization. So these were some of the examples that I wanted to mention.
Ashley, how do you convene all these institutions and have them work on POCs and?
Yeah, I think a few points. One is that there definitely needs to be a willingness on behalf of the government, whatever the department or institution is, to want to experiment and want to explore how an emerging technology like blockchain can help improve a certain process. So that was our experience. That's how we partnered with the Colombian Inspector General's office, but also with the mayor of Medellin and with the governorships and different mayorships, and also other public institutions in the country. So we had a lot of success in Colombia with that willingness and openness. The other point was that we did the challenges that we came across, some of them related to regulations or guidance that existed within the country against the use of cryptocurrency. So Marcos probably sees that as one of the benefits of the public permissioned blockchain, because you don't have cryptocurrency there. So, you know, even if the government wants to engage in just a small pilot or something with permissionless blockchain, they could need to use cryptocurrency, and they might not be able to, even just for the gas transaction fee. So that was one challenge.
Yes, so I'm gonna build on top of that, because I think, you know, I agree with the analysis 100%. So what's happening right now, what I've seen is that you have governments, you have large institutions and small institutions that hear about blockchain. They have been pitched blockchain for 3 years, you know, already. So they want to do something with this thing. They want to test it. They want to see how it works. So what they do is they hear, okay, this can help improve traceability, improve transparency, improve corruption, and they do that. So they hire someone to build a project. And then after 3 months, 6 months, a year, when they have the solution working and they like the solution because they see a cool interface, a cool mobile app, whatever, then they start asking the questions. They say, okay, we like this. Now, how does it work to have this in production? Who is gonna give me maintenance? How much am I gonna have to pay for the transactions? What's who is responsible for the information that is registered in this copy of this thing that you say I have shared with millions of people that I don't know? Or yeah, all of those questions are very important. And the reason why we are seeing that blockchain projects do not scale from successful pilots is because there's not reliable blockchain networks. And this is why we are building and providing LuxLaksan to build those projects in production. Like, for example, we've gone from projects in permissionless networks to projects in LuxLaksan that, for example, with 5 custom administrations from Latin America and the Caribbean. You can check Proyecto Cadena, and that this is with the custom administration of Chile, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and Costa Rica. They did it first in a private network in this case. And when they finished, it was like, okay, now who of the 5 customs is gonna govern this private network? Or if we go to a public network, who is gonna ensure that my information that is sensitive is not shared with others, is not compromised by others? Or if someone registers a link to child cryptography, child pornography in the network that I have a copy with, who is going to be responsible for that? So we are answering those questions with our legal framework, with our governance frameworks in our network. And this is what I think that is needed for projects to scale. And this is what I think the entities that at least are working with us in Latin America are seeing as the next step to taking projects into production, going from successful experiences in pilots to reliable blockchain infrastructures that allow them to scale. And there's a long work still to do, but I think we are on the right path on that.
And so what other elements, and will be my last question, do you think is necessary for scaling up these pilots and projects? So you've talked about frameworks, you talked about regulation, you talked about the willingness of governments to engage. What else is needed? I know that that's more top-down approach. What can be done from the bottoms-up approach? Marcos, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take it. So I think it is very, very important that multilaterals and organizations like the 3 of us that are represented in this call keep doing this hard work and working together in order to have common frameworks, common policies, and in order to work with international organization of standards like ISO, ITU, that we are already doing so, in order to set a basic set of rules for everyone to be comfortable with what they are doing with the technology. Because today there's not that set of rules. We are in the process of creating them. So we need to build common standards and common protocols in the technological level, in the regulatory level, and also in the use of different types of these digital assets. Once we have these common standards and protocols, and we all agree on them, it is that we are going to be able to build international, global blockchain networks that are interoperable, and that that entities know how to use them and how to interact with each other in that safe environment.
Yeah, and I'll add that I think it's important that the users and the institutions who engage are fully aware of the limitations of the technology as well, and they don't see it as a silver bullet. In the government transparency procurement project, we certainly came across several limitations related to privacy and anonymity, scalability, different spamming attacks, or the ability to defame an honest vendor permanently on the blockchain. There are several limitations and challenges, and our end finding was that blockchain-based public procurement could be valuable, but it could also not be. It's kind of country dependent on what your risks, where your risk of corruption is, and whether the benefits and the limitations, which way they end up in terms of this being useful for the country. Bribery activity still happens between humans completely outside of the e-procurement system, so it doesn't solve all of corruption. So just that awareness of the limitations, I think, is really important.
And just last point to add to what Marcos and Ashley said, right? So it's not just about technology for sure. There are big sort of governance questions. There are behavioral societal change questions that needs to be countered. But also another point about the need for basic digital infrastructure, especially in the context of some of our client countries, developing countries, where there is still need for more further digitization and good quality of sort of data that is required. So even some of those basic requirements need to be sort of looked at and focused when we're thinking about operationalization of these emerging technologies such as blockchain.
Yeah, the digital literacy of the users, the internet access of
Precisely.
the users, all of that stuff.
So a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for your exciting work and for sharing with our audience. And we'll share all your contact details if anyone wants to reach out and wants to engage with your institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Vanessa.